My talk title today is, Are We Related? We are so blessed in this community, and we're a blessing to each other. And you know, this community, Namaste, is a part of a larger organization called Centers for Spiritual Living. And that's about a 400 church organization, and it's churches from across the nation and worldwide. And, you know, we've come together in a different way over the last 5 years, and we're really starting to step into our own expression of who we are and taking that out into the world more. And in order to have that show up more forcefully, more truly, more divinely, we've decided to have a theme for the entire year, which is creating a world that works for everyone. And how do we do that? It's the one power, right? And so we have a monthly theme that supports that concept of the year, you know, and each month it's a little bit different. And this month we're talking about the power of the mind. And so how is it that the power of the mind goes towards a world that works for everyone? Well, let me kind of explain this a little bit. There's really two ways, if you want to change the world, if you want a world that works for everyone, there's really kind of two ways that you can go about that. You can stand over here in the world of effect, right? In the world of the physical realm, which is really where our governments all work from. Our newspapers report from this place. Our social working areas all work from this place. It's the place of what we can touch and what we can feel and what we see, right? It's the realm of the physical. As a physicist, my training from college is in applied physics. So as a physicist, this is what I studied, right? I studied the world of the physical world, particles and energy and their interaction. And if I'm going to be over here in this part of the physical realm and I'm going to be trying to make changes over here, what I'm doing is I'm going to be focusing on all the things that happen over here. I'm going to be making measurements of, is there enough food? Is there enough water? How's the economy doing? What do we have to do? Are the laws correct? Right? And if I'm over here, and personally, if I'm trying to change the world and create a world that works for everybody from this side of the equation, I'm going to feel overwhelmed. I'm going to feel like I don't have enough to give. In fact, I might even feel like, don't ask me to participate because I don't want you to suck me dry. Right? I mean, that's a natural reaction to being over here in the physical realm. But this month's theme is the power of the mind. We're talking about being over here. This is a happier place, by the way. You know, and what does that mean? What does it mean to be using the power of mind? Well, you know, our philosophy, we have a couple of different names for it. Religious science is one name. Another name for it is science of mind, and that mind is all about what we talk about, right? What we say in our philosophy is that there is only one mind, that there is a divine mind, that there is God's mind, that we share that mind. And what we are doing every moment of every day is we're thinking. Our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs are going into this one mind, and then the natural law that is God is creating out of that back over here. So if what I'm doing is I'm trying to change things on this side, on the physical side, you know, I'm just moving the furniture around over here, and I'm ignoring the cause that's over here, right? I am never going to really change the world if I'm over on that side. This is the place of power. This is the place of the power of the mind. And when I decide I'm going to participate in this year-long goal of changing the world, creating a world that works for everyone, I'm going to do it from my own personal place, right? I can't change the way you think. I can't change your beliefs. I can't change your feelings. I wouldn't even want to try and have that responsibility. Why would I want that? You're you. I'm me. But I have my own responsibility then, is what we're saying. We're saying that over on this side, we get to stand in a place of power because we are divine beings, and we get to speak our word knowing that there is a possibility, in fact, there is a right for this world to be a world that works for everyone. So, each week we get an opportunity, Reverend James mostly, me on occasion, to come here and talk about, for this week, how do we get an idea that kind of fits within that? So my talk title today is, Are We Related? Are we related? And I want to tell you how that came about for me, the talk came about, which is, I went to the annual convention. So there's the Centers for Spiritual Living. We get together as a body once a year, and it's part business meetings, part spiritual development. There's speakers and workshops there. And I really thought I would go there. I knew I was going to be giving this talk in a couple of weeks, and I thought I'd go there and I would get something from a workshop or one of the speakers, and I would bring that back to you guys. But, that's not what happened. Not that it wasn't good. It just wasn't what really rang in me. But what did ring in me was, last year we went to Las Vegas. This year we were in Salt Lake City. Very different experience, by the way. But this year we're in Salt Lake City, and so, one of the great things about being there at the convention is I know a lot of people because I've gone to Asilomar for many years and these conventions now. And so I get to go and meet people and see people that I don't see very often. And a good friend of mine, Amani, who's also in ministerial school up in Denver, she and I decided to hang out for the morning. And we went to see the Temple Square. And so at the Temple Square, it's a couple block square area in Salt Lake City, and it's really beautiful, by the way. And they have a garden there, but, well, Amani and I are from warm weather, and we kind of forgot it was winter there. So there wasn't much growing in the Temple Garden at the moment. But so we decided to go to the Genealogy Center. Now, the Mormon faith has a lot of reasons why they focus so much on genealogy, and I'm not going to get into that, but just let me tell you, they put a lot of money, resources, and everything into this center. It's a 3-story building across the street from the Temple Square, and we went in there, and Amani was the one who really wanted to go there. And I thought, well, I love Amani, and I'm just going to tag along because, to be honest, my family tree scares me a little bit. It's a little bit gnarled, a little twisted, maybe, just it's a little different. My father was married 3 times with kids from 2 marriages. My mother was married 4 times with kids from 3 marriages, and I'm in a gay marriage, which I couldn't even put into their system. And then and then I have 3 adopted children that you have to figure out how that goes in there. And so anyway, it's just a little bit different. I thought for sure I was going to spend 15 minutes in there and get out. 2 hours later, there I still am. And it was actually really amazing because once I put my parents in, I happened to tag upon some other people's work. And so on my father's mother's side, It went back all the way to 1300 in England, and I happen to be, related to Sir William of something or other. And I'm like, who knew? But, what resonated with me out of this was not the fact that I'm related to Sir William of whoever. It was that suddenly, that person who lived hundreds of years ago, 700 years ago, suddenly became part of me. And all there was a dotted line. And I thought, wow, that's kind of powerful. Because here we are, we're trying to figure out how to make a world that works for everyone. And what's the major difference? What's the thing that keeps being put into the mind of God that causes what we see? It's separation, right? It's thinking of ourselves as this is my us and those are them, right? And suddenly, my us had expanded. It was a much bigger circle. There was hundreds of people in there that go back hundreds of years. And I was thinking, well, how is it that we can use that, for our own purposes of working from this place of knowing that we can create a world that works for everyone. And in that way, in doing that, let's get rid of some of the separation that we see. So I thought, well, maybe if we can see that we are related to more people, then, that will help us. Maybe that's a tool that we can have in our toolbox to help us to think of ourselves as one race of people, right? Homo sapiens, and that we are all the same. And, there's a lot of truth in that. There's a scientific truth to that statement anyway. I don't know if you've heard about mitochondrial Eve and Y chromosome Adam. Have you guys heard of that? A little bit, okay. Well, let me explain it. I won't go into too much detail, but I find it fascinating. It's the physicist in me. So there's the Y chromosome Adam. All men share the same Y chromosome, is what it's saying. We get a Y chromosome that's been handed off from father to son, father to son, father to son, and they have traced it back and said that there is an Adam that lived 200,000 years, plus or minus 100,000 years. They don't really know. But, hundreds of thousands of years ago, there was this Adam that we are all related to. And on the women's side, there's mitochondrial Eve, which is each person, our mother has donated her egg to us, right? And inside the egg, there's these little things called mitochondrial, which are the thing that takes sugar and translates it into energy so that we can get up here and talk and move and think and do all the things that we need energy for. And inside those, they have their own DNA, and they've found the same thing, that we are all related back to this one woman from 200,000 years ago. So maybe, there's a way of us to look at that and say, we are all one race. We are all one people. How can I see everybody on this world, all 7 billion of us now, moving towards 11 billion, they say, by year 2100? How can we see that many people as us? There's another way that I think that we see people as us versus them, which is our friendships, right? That's really what we're doing when we say that you're my friend. You, who used to be them, have now just jumped into the us pile. We're friends. Well, there's lots of ways of being friends, right? We can contact a lot of people in our community here. There's people out on the streets. There's neighbors, all sorts of people. We can even use electronics. How many of us are on Facebook? Right? You can have friends on Facebook, right? How many friends do you have? Did you know you can only have 5,000 friends? Yeah, there's a limit on how many friends. If you go to try to get 5,001, they cut you off. But but you can have more than 5,000 followers, so there's still hope. Maybe you can be the first person with 7 billion followers on Facebook. But the concept here is really, I'm being a little funny here, but the concept is real. It's how do I bring more people into my space? How do I allow them in? How do I see them as us? Now, I was thinking, again, how else are we related? So we've talked about genetics. We're related genetically. We're related through friendships. Well, we can talk about some other things like sports. People like to be, fans of a particular team, and, now somebody else that is a fan of that same team, oh, you're one of us, right? Oh, that's great. I was also thinking about literature. I love stories. I love to tell stories. And so I was thinking, what are some of my favorite stories ever? And I went back and I thought about a book that I read when I was 13 years old. And I think you guys are going to know this one. It's the Lord of the Rings trilogy by J.R. Tolkien. And I've loved that book, since I was a kid. And now it's grown and grown and grown. And there's, 3-4 popular movies of it. And it's won Oscars and all. But it really has a tale that we can put into this relationship of being in the physical world or being in the mental world. Or were they creating, are those characters creating in that way? So if you don't know the story, it's written by J.R. Tolkien. And the first thing to know about J.R. Tolkien is that he grew up in England in World War I and World War II. And so I don't know J.R. Tolkien. He's been passed away for a number of years. But I can't imagine being a writer where that didn't affect my storytelling, that experience did not show up in my story. And so really, I think when I read that book, what I see him talking about the antagonist from a standpoint of being in the physical realm. In this story, there's a main antagonist, Sauron, the Dark Lord. And he's got the Ring of Power, and he's basically out there trying to take over the world because he wants a world that works for him. Exactly, That's it. He wants a world that works for him. And, when you're in that kind of a space, this side, the physical equation, is exactly where you're at. You're trying to work the world to make it in your image and work it from your standpoint for your standpoint. On the other hand, we have the protagonists. There's 9 of them. And they become the Fellowship of the Ring. Now, this is a motley crew if you ever saw one. It is made up of humans, halflings or hobbits. There's an elf in there, the tall, thin, long-lived race that lives in the woods. And then there's the dwarves, the shorter guys who live in the caves and in the mines, and they do a lot of mining and make things like swords in particular. So we've got these guys, and they don't really like each other, right? Does it remind you of our world? They don't really trust each other. It's not that they necessarily hate each other, but they don't really trust each other. They don't get along. And in fact, when they first come together trying to form this fellowship, they argue a lot, and they bicker, and they fight. But then they look over here, and they see Sarin, trying to make the world that works for him, and they realize, we have to do something. There's something that we have to do. Now, do they have the armies that Sarin has? No. Do they have the orcs that Sarin has? No. You're right, they just don't have the power that he has physically. But they know that they have the power of creative process, really. That's what it comes down to. It isn't written that way in the book, but that's what I see out of it, is they realize that by working together and having a common purpose, that's what that book is all about. It's the power of a common purpose, 9 people getting together and deciding that they're going to create a world that works for everyone. And of course they win, which is a good thing, right? We'd hate to have the world ruled by Sarin. So, we can have a cause in our lives. What that's telling us is that we can group together in groups of 9, in groups of 1,000, in groups of 400 CSL churches. However that group looks like, we can have a common purpose and have that create. Now, let's talk for a minute about Ernest Holmes, right? He's the founder of religious science, and let's hear what he has to say on this. By the way, the book of the month is This Thing Called You. It's a great book. Reverend James talked about it last week. It is a wonderful book. If you've not read this one, it's short, sweet, to the point, and I love it. But in This Thing Called You, he says, when a problem confronts you, take it into the silence of your consciousness. Instead of thinking of the problem, think of the answer. So don't think of the problem, think of the answer. God does not have problems. Therefore, the divine mind is the answer to every human problem. Think about that for a second. Do you think God has problems? I don't think God has problems, right? God is the principles which are, life, love, peace, joy. There's no problems in God. And so he says, principles never have problems. Problems are solved by bringing them under the control of principles. And here's the catch line. Here's the most important piece. The problem is dissolved as the principle flows through it to the correct answer. We don't even need to know the right answer, right? That's not part of the equation. Knowing the right answer is over here in the land of the physical. Identifying with the principle, identifying with love, with peace, with joy, with wholeness, with order. These are the things that our world needs. These are the things that we can do ourselves. These are the things that only we can do for ourselves. So I would like to invite you over this next week as you're doing your spiritual practices. I would like you to invite you to think about creating a world that works for everyone. I'd like you to think about it not from the place of, oh my God, I have to do all this stuff, I have to give all this stuff, I have to be all this stuff. That's not it. I'd like to invite you to think of it from the creative process, from the power of the mind, from that place of knowing that I am enough, from knowing that God is well pleased with me exactly as I am right now, from knowing that God creates through me and as me, and as we as a world see everyone as us, that God will create from that place, and we will have a world that works for everyone. Thank you. Namaste. So I'd just like to ground this in a moment of prayer, and so I would like to invite the practitioners and anybody else who's feeling particularly grounded to go and stand with me. I absolutely know that the life and the power and the presence that God is alive and well. That there is only one power, there is only one presence, and that is the life that God is. It moves in, as, and through all that we see. It is the invisible back of the visible. It is the love and the peace and the joy that we can actually even reach out and touch. It is that life that's living itself as us and through us. It is that life that is moving through each person here in this congregation. It is that life that pulls us together in the oneness that it is here in the congregation in Long Beach, the city of Long Beach, the United States, and the world. We're all together. We're all one. There is no us and them. There is only the life and the power and the presence that God is. And so as I recognize that truth, as I realize it more and more fully in my life, as I realize it as the truth of each and every person here, I know absolutely that the power that is God moves, and the Word moves on the still waters into creation, and we see that result. And the love that God is blossoms. And the peace that God is becomes still. And the joy that God is percolates through all of existence. And for knowing this truth today as the life and the power and the presence that God is, as the truth of our lives, that we are love, that we are peace, that we are joy, and that it expresses so beautifully, so divinely, so perfectly as our life. I just give thanks. And I release this prayer into the law, knowing that it's already fulfilled in the mind that God is, and I say it is good and very good, and together we say, and so it is. Amen.